All right, well, for more on the impeachment battle, let's bring in former Congressman Bill McCollum of Florida. McCullum was a House impeachment manager who presented the impeachment case against President Clinton in the 1990s. Congressman, it's good to see you. What I'm wondering here is, can the president's strategy to ignore and denounce the impeachment inquiry be effective?
Well, it depends. We have a track record of very little history with regard to impeachment trials and impeachments, period. There have only been really three efforts in American history. And what the President, White House counsel is really saying is we don't have due process, and we're entitled to that. All of the hearings so far have been behind closed doors in the Intelligence Committee. We don't have a resolution that went to the floor of the House to establish a formal impeachment inquiry as has been done in the past. And consequently, the Republicans and the defendant, if you will, the president, has not been given an opportunity, or they have not been given an opportunity to present witnesses of their own, and they can't see all of this material in some cases. So I think there is some argument that might actually go to the U.S. Supreme Court on this, whether that will prevail or whether the court will simply kick it back and say the Constitution says this is left up to Congress. You do whatever you want to do. There are no rules. There's no due process or whatever. But that's where we are right now. I also understand there have actually been no subpoenas served on any of the agencies or the White House. There have been requests for documents. So there's still some legal procedures to go through before we get to the point of determining whether or not there is an impeachable or potentially impeachable impasse here that leads to either an abuse of power or maybe obstruction of justice article of impeachment on the basis of not being forthcoming with documents. It's just a ways to go.
Well, given that you were one of 14 House impeachment managers during the case against President Clinton in the late 1990s, what advice would you have for your colleagues in the House right now who are going through the same thing?
Well, I would recommend them that they go slow, that they be deliberate, that they be open-minded, that they not jump to conclusions, which tends to be what's happening right now on both sides of the aisle, in my judgment. And I think there needs to be a clear and thorough investigation. When we were the impeachment team on the Clinton impeachment, we had an advantage. There had been an independent counsel that had did an enormous amount of work and sent a report in great detail outlining what were crimes, real crimes committed by President Clinton. I don't think most people dispute that he committed the crimes today, but ultimately, of course, he was acquitted in the sense that he wasn't convicted and removed from office by the Senate. But they did not deny that he had committed crimes. They simply didn't think they were high enough in rank and dire enough and whatever to remove a president. So what we're going through right now is a process where the committee, one committee, Intelligence Committee, is trying to do it all. And eventually, I presume that if there is anything further to be done, an actual article of impeachment is drawn up or more than one, the Judiciary Committee will get that task. But that's going to take some time. This is only a couple of weeks into an investigation. There needs to be a lot more laid out on the table. As somebody pointed out in some commentary yesterday, if this were ever to get to the Senate, I suspect, maybe even before then, there'll be a lot more inquiry about the Biden affair, the prosecution, what happened to Ukraine. And there's supposedly some other investigations going on now, both at the Justice Department and by an Inspector General that will be forthcoming shortly on other related information. So I think I would caution my colleagues to be very patient and not jump to conclusions.
Okay. Well, let's take a pulse check on how Americans and Republicans who support President Trump or of the Republican Party feel about this now. The American public actually taking this inquiry more seriously than the Russia probe. Now, 3 in 10 Republicans support the impeachment inquiry, and half of Americans say the president should be removed from office. How does this impact the way that Trump governs between now and 2020 and ultimately the 2020 race?
Well, if he is in office and not removed, which I don't think he will be, I think the biggest issue for the country is going to be the fact that we haven't been getting any legislation through. There's been very little happening in Congress. We're at a standstill until the next election, the way things are going. I'm not sure that there's going to be much that's going to happen, even if he went through the impeachment, because that's going to consume a lot of time. But look back on the past 3 years. Very little cooperation, very little common ground. It's been difficult since the Democrats took over in the last year, particularly. And I think that's going to be the case for the rest of the time that he's in office until the election occurs. It will be a campaign issue. Many of us believe, I'm one of them right now, that it's unlikely that he has committed an impeachable offense that will get all the way through the House, but maybe, maybe that will.
I just,
But if,
yeah, Congressman, that actually leads to my next question. If you were today in the House, would you support an impeachment inquiry? Do you think that his behavior rises to the level of something that is impeachable?
I don't know that his behavior rises to the level of something impeachable, but an inquiry means an investigation. It means a formal investigation. And I personally would rather see the House vote on this, say we are going to have a formal impeachment inquiry, send it over to the Judiciary Committee where it really ought to be, have open hearings so we can all hear what the witnesses have to say, and take the time that's necessary to have that investigation where both sides can call witnesses, where you can have a thorough examination of everything that's here. I think that would be in the best interest at this stage for the entire public, for everybody.
Speaking of those witnesses, we do anticipate that upcoming testimonies might be in store here, but Rick Perry, Mike Pompeo, Bill Barr, they're now at the center of this inquiry along with President Trump. What could upcoming testimonies shed light on in terms of their attachment to this and any potential fallout?
Well, obviously, there are certain key questions that'll have to be asked eventually of all of the folks that you're just naming and many others. We just don't know. We're speculating at this point. The president and his folks and most Republicans believe that right now it's been a very unfair process. There's been a constant attack on the president since before he actually took office by the Democrats. There's been an effort to say he's illegitimate. He shouldn't be the president. They thought the Mueller report was going to be there, et cetera, et cetera. So the environment, the atmosphere, if you will, is hostile at the present time on both sides. And that does not bode well for taking a calm look at all of the things that are out there. And there are questions that arise in each of these cases. But if you look at the four corners of the transcript of his call with the president of Ukraine, it's hard for me to see where just on the face of that there's anything impeachable that's occurred. I can see why people would be upset. But I think those debates are over the things that you do in an election, in a campaign. Sensitivity to the fact that he asked as a sidebar, while you're looking at the corruption question and looking at a crowd strike and the connection to the Democrat National Committee coming out of the Ukraine and the Russian connections and all of that, he said to the president, please look at the fact that this prosecutor was called off because, Vice President Biden at the time demanded that his son was serving on the board of this company and so on. And I think those are the type of things that aren't just looking at what he did or what is clearly impeachable.
We're going to be diligent. That's former House Representative Bill McCollum. Thanks for joining us, Congressman.
Thanks, Congressman.